Hey, welcome to the Warrior video series. Today we're going to start out with our first session. Sam Roberts, Pastor Sam Roberts is joining me today. Thanks for joining us, Sam. We're excited about this series. We're excited about just talking more about what God has for men and what He has for us in our marriages and our lives, and just to be more like Christ. And so let's start off with the first question. So, as a warrior in your marriage, how do you see your mission as a husband, and as a father, Christian man, all the things that you do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me be a part. It's always great to be able to invest in marriages, and specifically with guys, because as we know, we were just talking before we started shooting how, guys can take it towards, when a guy confronts a guy on an issue, it feels one way, but when our wives or our girlfriends or spouse, when a woman does it, it just feels different to us. But a guy can slap you upside the head, and so it's really good for us to be able to address
just guys to guys. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a great question about what our role is. I think for me, I've always kind of heard it said, and this is a real kind of church, but it's like they see scripturally our calling as husbands would be as a priest, provider, protector. So I've always seen it as my job with Jamie and my children is as the priest, it's kind of like I'm covering them with prayer. I am leading them spiritually. And as a provider, it's pretty obvious I'm doing my part to provide for them financially and take care of them. And then as a protector, I think sometimes you don't necessarily feel like I got to protect them from a physical harm, but as much as anything, it's a spiritual battle there, and protecting them as that warrior king in the home via prayer, and specifically like the shield of faith, and reminding them of who God is and what He says about them. And so that's kind of the role I play.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for me, one thing I really thought about is just being consistent that in my whole life, to not only be a warrior in my home, but in my work, everywhere I am. And I think there's times sometimes as guys, we might do a good job in one place, we don't do it as well in the other place. And for me, it's trying to bring that all together so that I have that mindset of what God wants me to do in my home, that I have that everywhere.
Right.
And then I don't do something stupid out here, hopefully, that's going to reflect back on my family and negate all the stuff that I was doing.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. So let's look at, both of us are really blessed. We work in Christian environments, but there's warriors that don't, and actually some guys that probably work in hostile environments. What would you say to them?
I think it's a hard place sometimes to find yourself in when you're surrounded by folks who are not, helping you in the best ways as a guy to love your spouse the way that Christ loved the church, or love your bride. And so I would say that, first of all, you actually do have an opportunity. The fact that God's put you there, that's a big mission field, to be a light in the darkness, to be someone who you have relationships with, that I'm not going to have relationships with those guys, you're not going to, and to be able to be a voice of truth into their life, to realize that, first of all. And then secondly, the critical piece that I would say is you can have those work relationships, but do not let those be the relationships that define your inner core. You've got to have good, solid, Christ-centered relationships with other guys that are around you, much like Jesus had his 12 disciples, the inner core, and so I think you've got to surround yourself with a good, solid network of people who are seeking after the same things you are, and then that puts you on a stable footing to be able to minister effectively in an environment that is more hostile toward the types of beliefs that you have.
Absolutely. If I was going to fight a battle, I'm not going to go in there by myself. No. I'm not David, so I'm not going to go in there by myself. And to have a group of guys that is like-minded, that is praying for me in those situations. I didn't always work in a Christian environment, and to have that kind of community behind me, I think it is. And I think I love what you said too. It is an opportunity, and sometimes we forget that. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'm playing penance on earth, with having to do this. But I think if we can turn that around, okay, God, why do you have me here? What do you want me to do here? And then having a support group of guys that are supporting you, praying for you, and encouraging you as you go through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference. Yeah. So, in this, how do we become warriors? How do we show love and not be a wimpy warrior?
I think that it's an interesting question. And I think that when I look at the idea of showing love, but yet not being a wimpy warrior, I really think about the Bible teaches us there's no greater love than this, that someone lay down their life for a friend. And that is a very strong statement. And if I look at the model of Jesus, I don't think any of us guys would ever think, oh, he's wimpy by any means, but yet also contained aspects of his character that were very meek and mild and very pastoral and caring. And realizing that there was this scene in the movie The Passion of the Christ from years ago where Pilate looks over at Jesus and he's like, he's saying, what are you doing? I have the power to be able to let you go, let you free, you don't speak or whatever. And Jesus, I loved it in the movie because he just looks over at me, he's like, you have no power over me except that which my Father has given to you. And it was just such a statement of, I am the King of Kings, but yet I'm choosing to yield that power in this moment for your good, even though you don't understand.
Yeah.
And there's no, when Pilate or others in the crowd might have looked on, they could have thought, oh, you're wimpy, you're not fighting. Why are you not fighting? Why don't you, why don't you stand up? Why don't you do something? Why don't you save yourself? As some of them, but there's no, as in retrospect, we see it as there's no more powerful moment than when he chose to take on our sin and die upon the cross. And so in like manner, for us to be able to, there's no greater love than that we can show for our spouse than to be able to love them as Christ loved the church and to be able to lay down our lives. What does that look like? Because we throw that around a lot, but I mean, it looks like this. It looks like after a long day's work, when I get home, when I get out of the car, I kind of give myself a mental pep rally of, when I come in, I don't know what Jamie's had all day. There's 5 kids in the house. Who knows what's been going on? So I think to myself, when I come in, I'm not expecting, dinner's got to be made, the house has to be clean, and all the kids are like, hello, Father, it's so good to see you. I'm expecting it could be chaos, and I'm ready to go get the garbage out, do dinner, whatever she needs. So I'm ready to come in as a servant, not a king in the moment, and I think that makes a world of difference. And there's nothing wimpy about that.
Yeah, and I think for, you talked about the movie The Passion. Nancy and I recently saw the Apostle Paul movie. Most of it takes place, Paul's in prison and he's talking to Luke, and at the same time in Rome, there's all these Christians they're hiding out because they're going to be persecuted in horrible, horrible ways that it shows in the movie and things that happen there. And the group of them are together and they're saying, we want vengeance. We want to get out of here. We're going to fight. And so Luke talks to Paul about it, and Paul's message back is, no, we're going to show them love. We're going to do this the way Jesus did. We're going to do it like from the cross, looking down and saying, Father, forgive them. And that's not wimpy, but I think in guys we have that in us sometimes, just,
Yeah.
But we got to live it like Jesus did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, that's part 1, Knowing Your Mission. We'll see you next time.